Hi everyone, it's Teacher Aunei again. Today I'll be talking about echolalia. So echolalia is an automatic repetition of phrases or words, and these phrases or words can be what the children hear from other people around them, or even from the televisions or the radio. So there are two most commonly known types of echolalia, which is separated into immediate echolalia and also delayed echolalia. So immediate echolalia, as the name mentioned, is something that when the children hear now, they will also echo it back now. They will also repeat it back immediately. For example, if I were to say, "Oh ni dah makan," and the child will be, "Dah makan, dah makan, dah makan," immediately after I mention the question to her. Meanwhile, delayed echolalia would be if there's a certain time gap between when the child hear the phrases or the words and them repeating it back. And this time gap can be as small as 30 minutes to days, to 1 day, 2 days, or even a week later. So today, instead of focusing more into the definition of echolalia, I would like to introduce more on the function. Why do children actually use echolalia? And also, what are some of the current intervention that are widely available on around the world that are being used to treat or to manage echolalia in children? So first of all, let us go to the function of echolalia. A lot of people might say that echolalia is a lot of studies or a lot of views mention that echolalia is just a generic movement, it's just a glitch in the verbal system of the kid. But there are also studies, newer studies um, that have mentioned that there might actually be some reasons or there must be something more than just a generic response or just a biological dysfunction in a human being. And what the studies found out that there are certain function for echolalia. So one of it is communication. This is when the children use the word that they learn in or the word that they hear in a way to express themselves. So the from hearing certain words and understanding how to use them, they would echo it back in a way that they understand. So for example, again, if I were to use the "Awak ni dah makan ke?" when the child remember and able to recognize that the question meant for meals. So for any other way that they probably get hungry or they wanted to a meal or they wanted to say, "Hey, look, I see food," they might repeat the same phrase again. So what can we do to help children who actually uses echolalia as a communication means is to expose them to a more diverse vocabulary. So this would then enable them to use this vocabulary to express themselves. So in a way, you're actually teaching them language skills. Next function is social interaction. Similar to communication, echolalic, the echolalic stereotypic vocal behavior that they experiencing is actually a way for them to connect to other people. So even though you might see that the words or the phrases they use might not be something that we commonly use, not something that is in a conventional manner, but it actually allow them to participate in the social setting. So it allowed them to respond to other people despite it might be out of context. Next is also as a learning and processing method. So a way for them to understand and practice language. So when they hear something from the TV that interests them, they will repeat it, and repeat it again as a way. As normal human being, we also function in a way that we repeat information in order to enable our brain to store and memorize it. So this is also similar to children with echolalia. they keep on repeating. It's just they repeat it out verbally in order for them to grasp or understand the language that they heard. So let's just move on to the intervention that are currently available to treat or to manage echolalia. Of course, when we're talking about echolalia, it is something to do with our verbal, our speech, our communication. So the first and most commonly known intervention would be speech therapy. One of the method that speech therapists use is the cue pause point intervention technique. So how do you do it? Basically, there are two main points in the cue pause point technique. Is first we need to identify the common phrases that are being echoed, and also to apply behavioral technique on this word or phrases that are being repeated. So how? First is cueing. So first, when you already know the common word that they repeat, you cue to make sure it triggers them to say that word. So for example, you can say, "Where are you now?" And then you immediately pause. Don't let them reply to anything. Don't let them reply to the question. Don't let them try to voice out the echoes that they keep on repeating. After a certain seconds or after 3 seconds, you point to the child and cue them to answer the question just now. So how does this help? This is actually after it being practiced multiple times, it helped to break down the unconscious thought. When the unconscious thought are being stopped or being broken down, this automatically triggered the brain to not say the echolalic phrase because the response had been stunted. So with multiple practice, this would eventually lead them to to reduce or stop having that particular phrase being repeated again and again. But what about other people that are not with the speech therapist background? Are there other intervention other than just practicing on speech itself? And yes, there are. So one of it is the infamous cognitive behavioral therapy that are often used by psychologists and psychiatrists. So under CBT itself, there are multiple techniques that can be used in order to manage echolalia. So there are four different techniques that can be mismatched that I will further explain later. So the first one is whole body vibration. We also have response interruption and redirection, or also known as RIRD, non-contingent music with RIID included, computer-based intervention, and match stimulation with RIRD. So for the first one, a whole body vibration. What does it do? So the main target for whole body vibration is to reduce repetitive stereotypic movement. So because it was initially used for Parkinson, so in a way we develop it to reduce stereotypic movement of the mouth. So verbal stereotypic movement. So how do we do it? Is first you ask the child to stand on a vibrating platform. It could be as simple as a balance beam that can vibrate, but it would be better if you have a machine that would vibrate continuously. Next, you would turn on the vibration in 3 to 4 times with 30 seconds interval each. So you would repeat this for 3 to 4 times while recording and measuring the stereotypic behavior, so the echolalia, 5 minutes before and 5 minutes after each vibration. This is to see how often and how many times would the echolalia appear. And based on the studies by Shannon Coigel, uh, the case studies that she had gone through showed actual reduction in cholera in 2 out of 3 cases. Another new intervention would of course be the computer-based intervention. So this is by using a specific app that are designed in order to um, encourage functional communication for echolalic children. So they would use a functional communication in a controlled setting, so only in the computer program, and it has shown research has shown 3 out of 5 case studies that resulted in reduction in immediate echolalic behavior. So their result focuses on mainly immediate echolalia. So the one that you repeat immediately after being exposed to the certain phrase or certain words. So the next technique is called response interruption and redirection (RIRD). It targets in reducing or decreasing the repetitive, stereotypic, and self-injurious behaviors. In our case, it is to reduce the echolalic behavior. It involves presenting demands or other types of distractor to interrupt the echolalic movement or the echolalic behavior, to also redirect them to a more appropriate response. And the research by Shannon showed that out of 3 case studies that she mentioned, all of them showed reduction of echolalia when using RIRD approach. So how does it works? So the experimenter or the instructor will instruct the children to follow a series of gross motor imitation, such as putting blocks in bucket. Then the therapist or the interventionist would would wait or would present the gross motor imitation until the children correctly and independently responded to 3 consecutive instruction, and this must be in the absence of the target motor stereotypy, so the targeted echolalia. However, if there are any incorrect or non-responses, the therapist would then reissue the antecedent, so reissue the gross motor imitation, and provided brief physical prompting to assist the children in demonstrating the correct response. So the last technique we'll be discussing today is match simulation and RIRD. So basically, is you pick a stimulation to match with your activity while also implementing RIID. This is to lower the motivating operation for echolalia, meaning to lower the need, the feeling of I need to echo this. So how is, for example, if music is our stimulation, we add music to the practice or to the task on hand. Uh, for example, through playing music on headphones and ask the children to use it while doing work. And how we do it is we check whether there's any echolalia that persisted during their task on hand when they are actively listening to music. So, all the case studies reported by Shannon showed reduction in both echolalic, so in both the repeated phrases, and also an increase in task behavior, meaning that they are able to attend more to the task on hand. So those are the techniques that the new and the current research techniques that are being used to manage echolalia. So let us briefly summarize what echolalia is. So echolalia are both functional and non-functional. This can be seen by the previous studies, the previous meanings that are being put in echolalia, in which they might be out of the context or non-contextual words being repeated and repeated again. And also with the newer studies, newer research that suggests that it is actually a functional reason. There's actually a functional reason behind the echolalic behavior. This lead to the usage. So the function of echolalia being researched mainly is for requesting items. So in communicating, and also in seeking attention while in a social aspect, and also in protesting. So in showing their emotion, they want to protest something, so they keep on repeating a certain word that they know, probably by the tone of it that they heard before. Again, this might be non-contextual, or it can also be to implement it as how they heard it before. However, although we had learned multiple methods of CBT, and also we have touched on one example of the classic speech therapy, there is a danger in mixing these two together. Why? Because ABA, or behavioral therapy, that uses RIRD mainly focuses on lowering the repetitive behavior, so lowering the echolalic behavior, which is a speech problem. However, SLT, or speech therapy, usually are done to encourage speech, to increase speech for communication purposes. So, if you have if a child is diagnosed with echolalia and goes to intervention in separate places, they might have referral to speech therapy, referral to behavioral therapists, and referral to psychologists or to a behavior therapist. It is very important for these therapists and for the people involved to keep a good contact with each other, or to keep a good report that each other can read, so that we understand that our intervention wouldn't clash with each other. Because imagine if some, or if we are teaching our kid to stop producing certain words, while another teacher is teaching our kids to keep on encouraging them to produce word. So that would be counterproductive. In conclusion, as mentioned in the previous slide before, we need to be very aware of how other disciplines, other people involved in the intervention of our child, how they define echolalia in the first place, and how do they actually intervene with managing or stopping echolalia. This is so that we can have a more effective therapy, effective intervention that can actually help with the goals that our client or our child have. I hope you learned a new thing about echolalia today. The echolalia is again the repeating phrases or words that children hear from other people or from the television or the radio, and it could be immediate or delayed. And of course, there are multiple ways to intervene, and we learned today the classic speech therapy, and also a newer version of the cognitive behavioral therapy that includes RIRD. So thank you very much. I hope you are able to benefit from this presentation today. See you next time.